Oh, wow. Okay. And here we are. If you sign up with a freebie for me and to get the dealing with disaster booklet thing that I've got or any of that kind of stuff, usually I have, whenever you fill out the form, a, an area where you can put a prayer request. And over the last few months, I have had several prayer requests come in from single moms. And this is an area that I have a heart for because my mother was a single mom for some of the time that I lived with her. And I am not, but I want to encourage these women. So I have invited some dear friends of mine and sisters in the Lord to help to help encourage in this very difficult time of life and season that some of you are going through. So, if you are a single mom or you have a single mom who is close to you who needs some encouragement, then this might be the one that you need to sit down and enjoy. So, grab a cup of tea or hot cocoa or something and join us. And hopefully, you will get some encouragement. So, I have with me today Rosemary and Tresa. And Rosemary, would you introduce yourself, please? Tell them a little about yourself.
Sure. Did you want me to include a snippet about my single mother background, or are you going to get into that later?
As the Lord leads. If that's
Okay,
what comes up, I'm not a dictator on this at all.
sure. So, my name is Rosemary Haida, and I am a financial empowerment coach, and I'm a licensed fiduciary and a speaker. And I'm the CEO and co founder of Fruitful Finances. I've been in financial services for almost 15 years, and I've been married now to my, Yahweh given, God given soulmate. We will have our 10th anniversary this coming Sukkot, Feast of Tabernacles, this autumn will be our 10th year. However, prior to that, I was a single mother for 10 years. So,
Okay. Tressa, would you introduce yourself?
I am Tresa Salters, and I am a holistic health and fitness coach. And I love helping other women to feel better. And a lot of that came from the time that I became a single mom, which was about 20, oh gosh, over 20 years ago. Um, 2003 was the year exactly. And I had been married to my husband. We had two children, and a lot of things went on that led to. I did. I will say that I felt like a single mom before I was actually separated from him for quite some time. I really did most of the parenting on my own, but um, we separated and divorced, and then 10 years after we separated, he passed away. So, um, single mom, but also then became the only parent for my kids, who were at the time both very young adults, 18 and 20. But um, so a very long time as a single mom. And now my children are adults, and I'm about to have my first grandbaby. She's 5 weeks. She's due.
Yay! Grandbabies are so much fun. They are
Yeah.
absolutely so much fun. Well, my mother left before I was 2 years old, and she was the typical hippie that hitchhiked across the United States and did all this stuff. I didn't actually meet her as my mother until I was 8 years old. I moved in with her whenever I was 10, and then I lived with her until I was 16. And so she went through husbands 4 and 5 while I lived with her. And then after I got married, she married husband 6. So I've had the, child of a single mom there. She was a very hardworking mother, and she had come from a broken family as well. So, we've got that there. And I try to tell people, because my mother was a drug addict, um, she loved Jesus, but she was never able to really have that close relationship or have fellowship with other believers, you know. So it's hard to, she's not with us anymore, so I want to be respectful whenever I talk about her. But it was difficult, and I went through the wild stuff, that a lot of us do, very, very young. Started smoking whenever I was 10, started drinking and doing other things when I was 13, and I try to use that as an encouragement to people, no matter how hard it is, no matter how bad it is, no matter how awful the other side of the family is, or how much, you know, baggage you're trying to heal through while you're parenting, because boy, I had that even being married the whole time. Um, they can still turn out okay.
It's true.
you know, even through the worst of circumstances, he can redeem us all. So that's the
Yes.
first encouragement that I
Yeah.
would have, because I know so many, there's other influences that you have no control over when you're a single mom. And I think that's one of the biggest concerns that I have heard was is those influences and what they're doing to their children and what choices that they're making because of those. And they're going to make mistakes just like we made mistakes. And we need to realize that and give them the space and the grace for that. At the same time, keep praying, keep covering them in prayer and love them through it, and believe and understand that they can receive his grace and his mercy and come to him and live a good life. So that's my encouragement.
Yeah, it's really true. I mean, I think that, when, especially if it's single moms, that there's a divorce situation, so the kids are going off with the dad, and oftentimes it's not a good, necessarily a good situation. Maybe the kids don't even want to go, and you have to make them go, and it's, until they're old enough to be able to make their own decision. But if you're doing the right things and being the good example for them, and not bad mouthing, not,
Mhm.
and just setting the good example, then the time that they spend there is, it's okay, because you're going to balance it out with the time that they spend with you.
That's so true. It's really important. My grandmother, actually, she's passed away now, but she told me that when my brother and I were growing up, because my mom was a single mom for about like 5 years before she and my stepdad married, and she said that my mom made it really clear to all of her family members that no one was to talk ill of our biological father. And I was really grateful for that. And even in my 20s, when my grandmother and I were having that conversation, the only thing she would say about my father was like, he's really bright. He's very talented. I think he just channeled it in the wrong direction. So she like complimented him, but then just said, obviously, she had some reservations, but that was like at that time in his life, like not at that current time because of, she hadn't seen him in a long time. And the other thing I wanted to say with respect to, that wonderful thing, Tresa, that you just shared is that I know that we're talking about single moms. However, frequently I encourage people, because obviously like homeschooling became a part of my single mother journey as well, is that, it's also like for single fathers, because sometimes it's like it's the mom who's not doing what she's supposed to be doing, right? And then it's the dad who's really being like, he's being the two parents in one. But essentially, whether it's a single mother or a single father, both of those parents are trying to be father and mother in one. And that is just not how the creator intended for it to be. And that can put a lot of undue stress on single parents that they may not even pick up on. And I didn't pick up on it until years into being a single mother. And that was because of a healing ministry, like, prayer group I was a part of, like inner healing. And so once I kind of started to get keyed in on that, it helped me to sort of have that lift off me, because then I knew like to pray about it and accepted more of letting like Yahweh, like God our Father, be like the male in our house. And of course he is, because he's our bridegroom, Yahusha for Christ, the Messiah is like, he is our bridegroom, but walking through that every day as a single parent, it's like you have to let it come into the practical things of life and not just make it about, your devotion time or when you're studying scripture. It helped a lot.
So true. It did for me as well. As a matter of fact, sometimes I wonder if, God brings us through difficult things sometimes to bring us closer to him. And that's exactly what happened with me, because things were very stressful when we first separated for quite some time. And it was affecting my health, which kind of is what led me to become a health coach and help other people, because the stress was affecting me physically so much. But the shift happened when I really started to trust God and let him help me through that, and walk me through the health journey and all the stress and everything. And a lot of days it was just really offering it up to him and saying, okay, you got to help me through this day, because I can't. That footprints prayer,
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
that was like, right. I mean, he just carried me a lot of days because it was hard. My kids were really young. I don't know how old your kids were, Rosemary, but mine were like 11 and 8. Um, so pretty young when things happened. And it was pretty yucky for a little while. So um, definitely really just leaning into him, and then seeing how he helped the kids through all the steps.
So my daughter Jasmine, that's one of my children, but she's 20 right now. And so her biological father and I were actually together for 6 years. We were talking about marriage from the beginning, and we were betrothed like the day after she was born in the hospital. I know that sounds strange, but like I was a new believer, so like there was a lot of stuff in there which I won't get into. But so, she was born, he proposed, not that we hadn't already talked about marriage, but so, and he was like there, but we weren't living together because I had already left prior to becoming pregnant with her, just to be in my own space, because I was temporarily with him and his mom until I got, to my next own place. And so, but it was interesting because even though we became betrothed the day after she was born, for like almost like about, so again, this would have been like the last 2 years out of 6 years, right? Just to put this in context, for about 2 years, Yahweh God, like he started to slowly sow that scripture, do not be unequally yoked with an unbeliever, into my heart. And he just kept dropping it and dropping it. And so the final break was when I was at congregation and our assistant pastor was, preaching that day because the head pastor wasn't there. And the last thing he ended with was that scripture. And I just broke. And I went up to the altar just by myself and I laid down the engagement on the altar and I broke the engagement with him. And so many people thought, what are you doing? Like that's your child's father. And but I knew that it was what, Yahweh was telling me to do. And so I had to be obedient to God, right? Like that's what mattered. It didn't matter what everybody else thought. And, maybe, some people listening know this, maybe some people don't, but the enemies of our souls will absolutely use counterfeit people of the opposite sex to come in and to try to derail the destiny and purpose that our Creator has for us. So it's so important that we literally be, waiting on Yahweh, waiting on God for the one, the soulmate. If you are a single father, he has an Eve for you. And if you are a single mother, he has an Adam for you. And waiting on him and trusting on him for your soulmate is absolutely one of the most important decisions you'll ever make, next to surrender your life to God, to receive Christ as your Savior. Like, there is nothing more important. And that will have such a profound effect on you and your children and your future generations to come. And I will say, just very quickly, I laid down that engagement at the altar. I had I met with him, in person to do that. And I can tell you that so many things flowed like a river in Jasmine and my life after that. And there's a whole nother testimony to what he did to bring him later on to Messiah, to Christ, but I won't get into that now. I can tell you that after that, years after that, there was someone else that, God sent into, I'm sorry, not that God sent, the enemies of our souls, pick a name you like, Lucifer, Satan, the devil, sent into my life. And it looked right and it sounded right. We read the Bible together and all this stuff, but again, Yahweh kept protecting me and saying, you need to separate from this person. I separated, and then within 2 months later, he revealed to me that that person had been sent into my life as an early death assignment against me and my bloodline. So I'm sharing that just to say that there is a great reward in single parents waiting on God for their soulmate. And it's the double blessing of not only for you, but also for your children.
Definitely. I have seen that we talk to our children about the possibility of God bringing them together with a divorced person.
Mm-hmm.
And because in this day and age, it's a conversation you need to have, and I heard so many of the homeschool families saying, you just don't marry somebody who's been divorced. Well, it's easy to say, but that might not actually be the way that's written. And then we had a big situation happen in our homeschool community, and one of the nicest young men in our homeschool community ended up divorced. And we had this discussion, because we knew that he was a wonderful young man who loved the Lord. And it was just a really hard situation, for the whole community in that situation. So I'm glad we had that conversation, because we had a fella come to our community and his wife decided not to come, and they ended up being divorced. She decided not to follow her husband, and there's a lot more to it, but for 7 years he was here in this community, became a part of the community, got involved in one of the churches, and for 7 years waited, did his every other weekend dad thing, and when the time was right, God brought him and Catherine together and introduced them to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And, Catherine just knew that he was the right person. And so she's been doing the bonus mom thing, and watching all of this, from the other side of it. And, we are so grateful for that time that he took. That was very important, I think, for his, growth in his relationship with the Lord, and for him to start healing from, some of his previous baggage and stuff. So yeah, I cringe whenever I hear women, whether they're married, not, whether they have children or not, saying, it's God's will for me to get married. It's God's will for me to get married. Sweetheart, he'll show you that whenever he's good and ready.
That's right. I,
Whatever you think you're
yeah.
hearing in here, put that aside, because until he actually just, by the time, whenever Paul came along, he had to pretty much whack me upside the head with him. for me to know, this is him. It should be that way of it is time. I saw it coming. I saw my daughter, and I'm sitting here telling Paul, Catherine is ready. She's ready for whoever he is. And just I always pray for my children, but definitely praying at that point, okay, Lord, I see it's coming. Prepare them both for this, whatever it is. And I'm so glad, you know. But yeah, the single parent thing isn't just hard on the people that are going through it at the time. It is hard for everybody who loves them, everybody who's around them, and everybody who's dealing with it. Because, the children have got these extra issues that they're having to deal with on top of just child things. You know, I know with me, I had a chip on my shoulder, something awful. I was probably not easy to deal with. I'm pretty sure I was not. So, God bless single moms and dads for dealing with us difficult children.
Well, sometimes there really is. And so for me, it was, I mean, I know there are some people that think they have to be with somebody, right? Like they get divorced and they're like looking for somebody right away. So I'm Catholic, and in the Catholic Church, you have to get an annulment in order for you to get remarried if you're going to. But that was never, ever a thought. My thought was, we can't be together to raise the kids because circumstances worked out that it just really wasn't safe for everybody. And my thought was never about, I need to find somebody else. It was always about the kids and how can I be the best mom to them through all of this. And I mean, I still believe that if God, has somebody for me, that it could still work out in my 60s. That's, but my priority always was the kids. And because I saw a lot of other people that were just bouncing from guy to guy, and that isn't necessarily a healthy thing for the kids either.
No, it's not.
It's really not. And so I just made them my priority, and God showed me that that was my focus in, all that time. And it still is. I mean, they're adults, but I still, you know.
Well, and I love the way you both ended up focusing on your health and your fitness, and then Rosemary with your finances as well. Because some of the biggest struggles, I mean, we all have the struggle at this point, but a single income family, uh, being able to, you know, raise the children and do everything that you need to do. Maybe you're getting, some child support, maybe you're not. Um, but being able to handle your finances properly, taking proper care of your health. You can't take care of other people if you are not taking care of yourself. And I'm not
So
going to go into the old, oh, we need to make sure we've got self care.
Oh, I'm with
Yeah,
you on that.
that's not, we don't want to fall into that hole, but you do have to take care of yourself. So many of the scriptures in the Old Testament are rest, you know
mhm.
and ways to take proper care of yourself. Watch your diet, eat clean, eat, just, they're those take care of yourself things. So that's important. And
It really is. There's that oxygen mask analogy,
yes.
like
Yes.
an airplane, right? And it's so true. And because I'm with you on the self-care thing, like I think it's become such a thing to like say, oh, self-care, like go to the spa and whatever. But really, the importance of it is you have to put your oxygen mask on first so that you're breathing before you can help other people. And as a
Mhm.
single mom, that's you're on 24/7, most of us, Um, My kids went with their dad every other weekend for like a 24-hour period. So I was on the whole rest of the time. And it's, if you're not taking care of yourself, how can you take care of them?
Right.
Plus,
It's
you
so
need to
true.
set that example as a mom. That's part of your job,
Yes, the
That's right.
example. Yes.
you know?
When Jasmine, so when, you know, uh, Jasmine was almost 3, and Keith, her biological father, had been like kind of there, but he was there sporadically. And then when she was almost 3, he just kind of made a decision to just kind of stop. His decision, I got in those first, 2.5, 3 years, I got occasional child support. It was not ever regular. And then I got hardly any after that. It would be very sporadic if it ever showed up. And actually, during those 10 years, um, I was a professional massage therapist, certified fitness specialist. I would actually teach swim instruction during the summer and lifeguarding because I, did that as well, competitively. So I was already like had a healthy lifestyle. Like I've been like that since I was growing up. So for me, like the concept of self care was probably like having alone time in a bathtub,
Yeah.
and we didn't have a bathtub. So this is a true story, but I'm going to tell it really fast because this highlights the necessity of something that I was hoping there'd be an opening to share, and I'm going to share it because it's so important. So when the one apartment that we were living in, this is when Jasmine was like, she was in her first, 3 years. So I had, a full shower, and I used to put like a little plastic tote, and that's where I would give her a bath because, she would be contained and I could take care of her, wash her, whatever. And so, I could hose her down because I had like the hose in the shower. And then I so missed having a bath that I literally went and bought like this huge tote that I could just fit in my shower. And I would either be like with my knees up to my chest, or I would put my feet up on the wall and I would lay back. So my congregation, when Jasmine was, I don't know, she was probably 18 months, they had like a women's retreat, weekends women's away treat. And so I had friends watch her, and we went, and so we were at this beautiful thing that we were staying at. And, because it was a group, we got a great deal because we were all pitching in economically. And so one of the things that I couldn't wait to do was to get in this huge bathtub. And I brought like all my dried like orange and lemon peels, to put my essential oils. And so my friend was like, what are you doing? I'm like, well, I don't have a bathtub. So for me, like, this is one of the best things about being here. Well, it made such an impact on her. And this is my friend Anne. She said, I didn't even think about it, right? Like you just take for granted. She said, if you ever want to come to my house and take a bath, she's like, you call me and you can do it. Well, do you know I didn't ever call her? Do you know why? Because I realized years later that it was my pride that kept me from calling her, even though I knew that she had a heart to help me. And we had a great relationship, and she helped, we worked with each other in other ways, like our children were friends. But I'm sharing this to say that pride is one of the things that will keep a single parent from getting sometimes the help that they need. And we must remember that our Creator's words say, ask and it shall be given unto you. Seek and you shall find it. Knock and the door shall be open. And all I had to do was pick up the phone and say, hey, Ann, could I come over? Maybe we'll work out a day or whatever. She would have said, yeah, come on, bring her over. The
We
children
had
will play. You
already
take a bath.
provided that way. Yes.
Totally. But I didn't ask. So I didn't really have the child support, to Tresa, to your
Yeah.
point. And I did do self-care. And the thing is, I echo what you say, because we must live that healthy, spiritual, physical, emotional lifestyle in front of our children. And, I was very athletic. And when Jasmine was eventually like, in some later years, she was in gymnastics. So I would watch part of her gymnastics practices, but then the other part, I was in the gym in the same facility because it was at a YMCA, and I was working out because that was how I get my workout in, even though I was doing physical stuff for my work back then. So she learned that, and she's carried on the love of that. That's so important. and there's lots of different ways to do that. You can walk, you can exercise with a child, which I used to encourage all the women in my MOPS, Mothers of Preschoolers International. Great ministry for any single, whether you're married or you're a single, parent out there. Well, it is just for moms, but it's a women's ministry. But that's a phenomenal resource. If you can look that up, MOPS, it's Mothers of Preschoolers International, great resource. And like, I would encourage the parents, I'd say, look, I said, your child is growing every day. So if you have them in a snuggly on the front and you're, vacuuming and you're lunging, they're growing with you. It's like automatic increased strength training every day, every week. And they would be like, what? But then once I started explaining it to them, they would get it. So it's the littlest things like can make such a huge
I
difference.
would lay on the floor and I would lift them up and down.
Yeah.
They had a blast with that, and yeah,
Well, and my kids were a little bit older, so we would spend a lot of time outside, and we would walk or hike or bike and get out in nature, and we get our exercise that way. And we had a cranberry bog right behind our house where we lived, and so we'd hike through the woods and we'd walk the cranberry bog, or you know, I'd throw our bikes in the back of the car and we'd hit different trails and go biking, and we were getting the exercise and spending time together. So that can be a blessing for you and your kids when you can do
yeah.
things like
I think so often I see single moms wanting to try like overdoing activities, trying to make up for, the lack of family or whatever. And so they keep every weekend that they have their children busy. And the dads do the same thing. Oh, the kids are coming this weekend, we've got to do something. And the best um memories that I have with my mother are just those times that we spent just watching a movie together, riding horses together, yeah, going for a hike, just little things that didn't cost any money,
That's right.
doing a craft together, reading a book together, going through poems, there are so many things that you can do together that doesn't involve necessarily a screen or cook together.
yeah, I was going to say cooking, baking. Those are great.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
yes.
Yeah.
That's so
So
important.
yeah, you don't have to be signed up for all of the activities and stuff. As a matter of fact, I can feel like if you're not careful, not that some of these activities aren't good, but if you're not careful, the activities can actually take away from your relationship.
That's
So
right.
don't get tangled up in those activities and make sure you're spending just quiet time alone together. If they say they're bored, let them be bored. It's okay. Boredom is good for them,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I,
Get outside, give them a book to read, give them the Bible to read.
yeah.
Don't give them a screen.
I mean,
Don't.
play Scrabble, play some of
Yeah.
those boring games that,
Yeah.
yeah, play Scrabble or Dominoes or Uno or something. Put a puzzle together, do
Yeah.
those kinds of things. Yeah.
That what you just said, both of you, is bringing to mind a remembrance of something else that I think is a great um, thing to touch upon, which you both already have, and that is the screen time, which brings me to a little testimony about boundaries. So, when Jasmine was about 3, maybe 4, my parents, whom I love, wanted to get her like whatever. It was like a children's version basically of like what this is obviously almost, 17 years ago, but it was like a children's version of probably like what would be like a small iPad, right? But it wasn't an iPad. And I prayed and I asked Yahweh God, and he was like, no. And so, I said no. And in hindsight, I learned through the years that while my no stood for our house, what I didn't do is I didn't stand firm on that boundary. Like, say, well, we would go, my parents would come in from out of town because they lived out of state, Or if we say like, oh, you can bring her to the hotel room if you've got to run out and run an errand, and then we'll meet up with you like in an hour or something. So, they would take her. But the first thing my dad would do would like put her on his lap, and then they would be on the screen. Right. So she was still getting it anyway. So I learned that in hindsight. However, even into her teens, we were still praying, praying, praying. And that at that my point was my husband and I. And it was, you know, what is God's will regarding like a phone, and she had a phone later than other teenagers. And we are thankful for that. And that was just his will. So, and when we would go camping, when she was, I started taking her camping when she was 4 months young. And even when she was, enough years to walk, if she was, say, like coloring or something in the car, or like, playing with something, the only thing I ever let her have was a leapfrog back then, because it was like she could do learning games. But that was it. And that wasn't, like the screens of today. But I let her know, I said, the moment you get out of the car, anytime that we're camping, the only thing that you have to play with is whatever you find on the ground outside. And she really learned to appreciate creation because of that. So
Yeah.
there's
I think
something to be
that's
said
wonderful.
for standing on firm boundaries regarding electronics or screens. And then the best memories that we have are exactly what Donita and you and Tresa, you said, is like, we read together constantly the Holy Bible, and, the actual adult Holy Bible. And then I would do a children's one with her, which, was kind of like interactive, like asking her questions. And when she was like 2, I'd give her multiple choice for the answer, was like, so she was like answering the comprehensive questions, and then she would be graduating along. But we read together, in the mornings, and we read together in the evenings. And some of the happiest times that we had on Sabbath would be like, she and I would scooter. Like, we had a scooter that was big enough for me. So we would scooter around town, or where we lived at that time, or we would ride our bikes to the park. That was like 7 miles. I mean, she was doing that when she was like, 8 or 9. Like, it can be done. And so, and that doesn't cost any money. And it was just, happy times and a great spiritual and physical investment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's good. Well, I think we're running out of time this time. I would love to do a part 2 with you ladies, if you're okay with that. So I think we will wrap this up, and their information will be down in the comments. So definitely look both of these ladies up, and watch out probably next week for the part 2.
Thanks, Donita.
That's good.